Good morning, everybody. It's Lisa Salberg, and it's a Friday morning at about 11 a.m. Eastern Time. It is January 21st, 2022. We're live right now. If you're watching live, we will be taking questions and answers at the end of the session. But if you're listening to us in podcast land or on YouTube later or some other date and time, leave us a message and Mike and I will get back to you. Today, I am joined by a really unique individual and somebody I've known for a really long time, and we're going to get to know a little bit more about Mike Papale. Mike, good morning, and welcome to Tales from the Heart.
Good morning, Lisa. Yeah, thank you so much. I'm excited to have this great conversation with you.
I think we need to get our listeners involved with who are these people and why are they talking to us? Mm-hmm. So I have been running the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association for coming up to 26 years, which seems absolutely impossible because I'm 28. But early on, not early on, but while we were getting our cadence as an organization, I distinctly recall the day the phone rang with a mom who was in a parking lot at a hospital, and her son was in the hospital, having just been brought in within the past 24 hours after suffering a cardiac arrest while at a basketball event. And she was just hearing the words hypertrophic cardiomyopathy for the first time. And she was a good Google searcher. She immediately found a phone number of a person who knew what that meant. And I met your mom, as she was known to me mostly at that time, on a forum as B-Ball Mom. But Joan called and we spent a lot of time on the phone getting to know each other while trying to help her figure out what was going on with you. Mm-hmm. So I met you when you were unconscious in a way.
Right. That's right.
And that's how I came to know Mike Papale and his story. And it's been an interesting one. So Mike, take us back to the few hours before I met your mom. What happened to you?
Yeah. So I'm thinking you probably met her on August 25th, 2006, because my cardiac arrest happened on August 24th. So it might have been that night, but my guess is it was the next morning. But so on August 24th, 2006, I woke up at like 6 a.m. and my brother and I decided we were going to go do a basketball workout because at the time, we were actually counselors at my dad's basketball camp. So we went over to a local gym and did a basketball workout, and it was completely normal for like an hour and a half. And I was totally fine. Like I can still remember the workout, 15 years ago. And I remember it. I remember feeling fine. I remember it being like a pretty strenuous and intense and, typical workout where my heart was, all over the place, up, down, sprinting, stopping. And after the workout ended, we went over to the Wallingford Parks and Recreation Center, where we lived in Wallingford, Connecticut at the time. And I walked in at like 8 o'clock, and we were counselors again at this camp. And my dad was in there, and I said hi to him, and I changed my shirt, and I ordered lunch. And I don't remember anything after that point. So it's 8 o'clock in the morning. From 8 to about 10:30, I was, coaching kids, putting kids through drills, refereeing, typical camp counselor duties. And at 10:30, I was sitting on the bleachers, right next to my best friend, and a bunch of kids were around me. I just kind of like took a face plant, kind of slumped forward and was, laying on the ground. And my friend stood up and kicked me and was like, "What are you doing?" Of course. And, I was in sudden cardiac arrest. And as I'm sure a lot of listeners know that are passionate about heart disease and these things, the only way you can survive cardiac arrest is you need immediate CPR and a quick shock from an automated external defibrillator. So unfortunately, in my position, neither happened. I was agonal gasping, which is a very common symptom of cardiac arrest. But because of that, some people did not jump in and do CPR. And the building I was in had no AED in it, which is...
What year is this?
So this is 2006. So, I would say they're a little less prevalent than they are now. But, recreation center, youth, adult camps, still probably a place that should have had one. But anyway, somebody called 911 because, of course, I wasn't responding. And I got really lucky because in the building next door, there was a man sitting at his desk, and he was working his 9 to 5 job, but he was a volunteer EMT. So when 911 was called, his pager went off, and he says that he happened to have it on him that day. It wasn't like a everyday thing that he did, but he had it on him, and he looked at it, recognized the address. And what was interesting about that was the 911 call that came through, and he's described it as an unknown medical. So he kind of started walking over thinking maybe a kid at the camp broke their arm or just got hurt. And he was like, I'm certified in first aid and stuff. I can go help. And as he's walking over, another, call comes through basically saying a 17-year-old's unconscious on the ground. And immediately he knew cardiac arrest. So he ran over and found me and gave me really good CPR until an ambulance arrived, and the EMTs were able to run in and use their defibrillator. And, they got a heartbeat back on site there, and then put me in an ambulance where I suffered another cardiac arrest. And, the pads were still on, so they shocked it right back. And I ended up in the hospital. And I think that first night, my parents sat with a doctor, and the doctor, Dr. Heller, basically told them it could be a handful of different things. And one of those things was hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which I think you described my mom perfectly as a Google research master. So she immediately was on Google, and of course, found the HCMA, and that's kind of what led her to reach out to you.
And immediately your mom said, I want the best in my area. Where can I go? What do I do? Who do I call? Mm-hmm. And we gave her resources of some individuals that she might want to get involved. And so one of them ended up writing the foreword of your book.
That's right.
So I guess that referral worked out well for you.
Yeah.
And we're really happy about that.
Yeah.
So that's jumping ahead a little bit, but we're gonna take this in bite-sized pieces.
Yeah.
So you wake up after a cardiac arrest, going, the minute before you remember yourself being a healthy, normal, and I put my air quotes for those who aren't watching.
Never been that normal, but
it's a podcast, but I don't know what normal is, but you thought you had normal health. You thought you had no pre-existing conditions. You hadn't had any signs or symptoms up until this event. And you wake up to the news that you have hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. And the thing that you really like to do, basketball, is not going to be on the table anymore.
Right.
And you're 17 years old, full of vim and vigor, going out to take on the world like every 17-year-old.
Yeah.
And you're given not so great news. How'd that go over with you?
Yeah, it was, it was definitely a mix of emotions, because I think, on the one hand, it was like, you're sitting in front of a doctor who, I guess to take it back a little bit, our family was very ignorant and unaware that heart disease could affect young people. Right. So when they first had that conversation with the doctor, I think my dad basically told the doctor she was wrong. We just had no clue. And I had the same surprise when I was told, right. You always kind of associate heart disease with the old person, or the person that's not fit, or the person that, whatever it is. I was in complete shock. But the feelings were completely mixed, because, you have a doctor sitting in front of you telling you this is what happened. You went into cardiac arrest, and then telling you statistics about cardiac arrest, and then basically saying, because no CPR, no AED, you probably shouldn't have made it. Right. Because most people in my situation that don't have those two things immediately don't make it, unfortunately. And so that was like the one side of it. So of course I was feeling very lucky and blessed and just fortunate to be alive. And then the other hand, I wasn't a very well-rounded kid. I did well in school, and I played basketball, and I thought basketball defined my life. I thought it was my purpose. I thought it was, I was very short-sighted, I guss, at the time. It was like, I'm going to play basketball in college, and then whatever comes after that comes after that. It wasn't even like a thought. It was like a future me problem. There was extreme feelings of like anger and, just not understanding why this could have possibly happened to me. My purpose in life felt like it was taken from me, and, sadness, some feelings of like depression, and just like frustration. Like, what did I do to deserve this? Why did this happen to me? So it was definitely very mixed, but it was definitely, and it was also very hard news to get.
So you find out you have a disease that you didn't know you had.
Mm-hmm.
Then you find out that the therapy for your disease is to put a computer and wires in your chest.
Yeah.
How'd that go over at 17?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of fear and like, my doctors were incredible. Nurses were incredible. And they're all trying to like ease our like uncertainty, ease our fears. But still, I mean, when the doctor's sitting there explaining to you like, hey, you're going to have this device put into your chest, it's gonna protect you. It's going to allow you to live your life. It was, but it could shock you potentially if it doesn't need to. If it does, it's going to hurt really bad. So it was really scary. But my doctors and nurses did the best to kind of put my mind at ease, and it wasn't really an option. So it was like, you're going to have to figure this out, and we're putting it in, and you're going to have to adjust.
So I like to tell people who are getting a device, whenever possible, make friends with the concept before you get it put in. When you've just survived a cardiac arrest and you're in a hospital and they say you're not leaving without one, you don't have a lot of time to prepare for what it's like to live with a device, and you don't really have time to make it your friend. So how long did it take you to be comfortable with a device in your chest?
I would say, after I would say about 6 months, I kind of, adjusted to it. And, early on, to be completely honest, when I went home, that's when I had the biggest struggle, because you go from, 14 days of being like cared for 24/7. And if something doesn't feel right, you hit that button and the nurse comes. And I hit that button a lot. Like it like wore it out. Like I was hitting, because you're just like so nervous, and something beeps and it's like, oh no, what's going on? And the second I went home, I kind of had this realization that like, I love my parents, but they're not medical professionals. And like, I'm like, well, what if something happens now? And so early on, I had this big fear of, like dying in my sleep, and the device wasn't going to work. So, I would say after, you have that initial adjustment where, I was in a sling for a few weeks, and then you kind of get the natural movement back in your left arm when you're out of the sling, and you can put your arm over your head. And I started kind of just like walking around like a normal high school senior is when I kind of was like, okay, I can be okay with this. And that, I guess I shouldn't say it didn't like completely put all the fear away, but in general in my life, but it, at that point I was like, okay, like I'm going to be able to kind of walk around and be a normal person with this device inside me.
Typically it takes people 6 months to get used to it.
Yeah.
I have my rule of 3. It's the first 3 weeks. Okay, let's be honest. They suck. It hurts.
Yep. It hurts.
And you got swelling and it's pain and it hurts. But the first 3 weeks, yuck.
Yep.
Then the next 3 months, it actually takes all that time for the swelling to kind of go away, and you know what it's really going to look and feel like. And then another 3 months, you kind of are like, oh, it's not that big of a deal.
Right.
So it goes from high intensity, focused on every minute, to, oh yeah, that thing is here.
Yeah.
And it's protecting me.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And I have a great one, something that has really helped me put it in perspective. And this came years after I was actually speaking at a conference and telling that exact story about how I had this fear of, I couldn't go to sleep, right? I was like, I'm going to die in my sleep. And I said it, and I was speaking to a bunch of cardiologists, electrophysiologists, and the woman who was moderating the conference or my talk, she's her name's Dr. Rachel Lampert, and her and I are really close now. We do some work together, but she said, I'll never forget that she was like, it's interesting you said you have trouble sleeping after you got the device, because as a doctor, I sleep better once I put the device in the patient because I know they're safe. And I was older. I was probably 26 or 27 when I was doing this, and it was years after, but I'll never forget that because it just kind of gave me a whole new perspective on the device.
So we both work with Rachel Lampert for many years.
Right.
In fact, I have to be honest, Mike, I didn't buy your book. Rachel sent it to me.
Oh, did she? Oh, that's awesome.
She's like, have you read this? Do you know him? I'm like, yes, I know Michael. And yes, I know you. And yes, we have a small world. So we've worked with Rachel on the Hcm registry, the Live Hcm registry for athletics involvement. So, and we're working with her again now in a bigger role at the Yale program. So we have that in common. We have a lot of things in common, Mike.
Yeah.
We have a lot of things in common.
Good and bad.
Devices, HCM, crack chess, you name it. We got it all. You can stop. We can stop having things in common that way. You don't want the rest of my stuff. So fearing your device.
Yeah.
I feared when I didn't have a device and I knew I was at risk and I was still waiting because mine's a decade before you. So I was implanted in 97. Mm-hmm. I worried about sleeping when I knew I was at high risk and I didn't have the device. So when I got the device, it gave me peace of mind, but you were young and you didn't have a chance to process that you were actually safer at that moment than you had previously been. Mm-hmm. So it's a really interesting perspective.
Yeah.
So the original plan for Mike's life was to be this college basketball star and take that into a career path. But HCM, as I say, made you adjust the sails of the boat and sail off in a different direction. So tell me a little bit about how the diagnosis, the device, the experience changed the path for your future.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely took time. So two things kind of happened. First thing was my mom, again, she got in touch with the American Heart Association, which kind of gave me an into the world of advocacy. And randomly, we had an AHA office in our hometown, which there's not a ton of them. So it was a really random thing. So we went and met with them. So that was kind of the first time and I was totally against it at first. I was just this is, typical 17-year-old. When your mom tells you to do something, you just think it's dumb. You're like, this doesn't make sense. What are we doing? But I told the story and I remember walking out of the meeting and being like, oh, wow, that's cool. I could see myself kind of being involved or working for you, doing something involved with the heart. And then, obviously I was had to make a decision about basketball. And my younger brother was, turning into a really good basketball player. And, I wanted to be around him. So I knew I still wanted to be around basketball. So those two things kind of pushed me along. I was volunteering, speaking for the AHA. I was coaching some travel basketball. And then when I went to college, I decided to be a student manager for the basketball team at the school I went to. It was a small Division I school, and they had just gotten a new coach who came from UConn, and it was a big deal. And he couldn't have been, better, person to me, and treated me really well and let me kind of join the team from that perspective. And it kind of gave me that sense of being a part of a team again. And then I kind of realized kind of what the coaches do in college. And I was like, wow, I could be a college basketball coach. And that's kind of what I really put my mind to during my 4 years in college as a student manager. And then really spent the next 6 years of my life after college doing until, I guess the sales changed again after that.
Well, the good thing is the sales do change often in life. Yeah. It's how you react to them, and whether you push them in that direction or they push you in that direction.
Yeah.
But for you, it's a little bit of both. So you did a little coaching. You're still doing some coaching, right?
Yeah. Yep. So I was coaching full time, right, in college. It's a 24/7, 365. It was really intense career. But now I'm coaching high school, and it's it's able to give me some more balance and do a little bit of everything that I love doing, which is great.
So I'm going to start flipping through the book because I got lots of tabs here.
Yeah.
So we're gonna do the potpourri, and if you want Mike's book, we'll put a link below where you can get a copy of the book and you can read it yourself. It's a good quick read, and it's knowing the backstory and seeing how you wrote it. I'm like, yep, I know when this happened. Yep, I know when this happened.
Yeah, you lived it. You lived the whole thing.
I was living in the background of the book. Yeah. I'm somewhere in that glue there that kind of put the pieces together. But after you get diagnosed, we do family screening. And what do we find?
Well, so some good information and some non-information, I guess. So my dad has a disease, and they found that right away, just on his echo. And it was an interesting at the time. He was 45, so he played 2 sports in college, and it never affected him. And he just turned 60, and it still never affected him a day in his life. So that was kind of step one. my parents. And then step two is my younger brother. And, we tried to do some genetic testing, and it came back as an unknown variant, I believe is what it's called.
Uncertain significance.
Okay. Sorry. Yes.
That's okay.
That was interesting as well, because he was 13 and he was playing basketball, and it kind of left him in like a gray area, which was hard for our family. And we knew we had to get him tested every year, but it kind of added some fear. It added two fears. So number one, for me, every year when he got tested, it was like the worst day of my life. It was just so nerve-wracking. And I've always felt that, although not that I would ever want someone to go through a cardiac arrest, the fact that I did go through cardiac arrest helped me put into perspective that I could no longer play basketball anymore. And I think it's much harder from a psychological, mental side for someone that is diagnosed off a test that's never been affected by the disease to get the news that your life has to change because you have the disease, but it's never affected you. Because it's hard for them to understand like the impact that it can have. So that was a really hard, like really nerve-wracking thing for me. And thankfully he didn't. He played basketball in college, and he gets tested every year, and he still doesn't show signs of it.
He's still negative.
He's still negative. And then the other fear was this, I just had this in the back of my mind of like, okay, he's getting tested. Say he's getting tested on whatever, February 1st of every year. Well, what happens between February 1st, 2007 and February 1st, 2008? Like, what if, I don't know, it didn't show on February 1st at the appointment, but it developed on April 1st and potentially, right? We just had all these like, things that, it was just scary kind of having him in the gray area.
It's a frightening experience to go through screening of a family member. Mm-hmm. It's stressful. Mm-hmm. And we often talk about it from the parental point of view, mm-hmm. but from the sibling point of view, you're already in the club you don't want to be in. Mm-hmm. And you don't want to see your kid brother or sister or niece, nephew, you name it, get a membership card too. Exactly. You hopefully want to protect them through some magical thinking that it's not going to be them. But it's so important to have these family screenings done. Mm-hmm. And the anxiety, unfortunately, we have to just live through it. That's why we set up our discussion groups and some other support mechanisms so people can, oh my God, it's that time of year again, I'm freaking out. Or it's been 6 months and I'm worried. And should I go back and get checked? So these are all really complicated issues. And as of today, you're the only one who's had any negative consequence in your family from HCM. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah. So my dad lives with it. But I'm the only one that's had any sort of any symptom really.
Yeah, and you picked a good one.
The main one.
you pick a Mac Daddy. Okay. So you had the opportunity to see Marty Maron within the first 6 months of your diagnosis. Mm. I love in the book how you explain Noreen coming in and saying, Marty will be right in. You're like, the hell's Marty? It's like Dr. Marty. Yeah. And the, hey, dude, how you doing? That's Marty's approach to a 17-year-old.
Yeah.
I like to tease him that he's kind of a big 17-year-old too. So.
Smart one.
He's a smart 17-year-old, but inside, I know I can still see that 17-year-old kid inside of there, right? So you meet Marty, Noreen, the team at Tufts. At that time, Mark Link was up there. He became one of your electrophysiologists who you get to know real well in a couple more years of this story.
Yeah.
And what I want to kind of highlight here is the difference. So you were seen in a good hospital where they gave you great emergency care. They diagnosed you quickly. They gave you the proper therapy. But then you went to an HCMA recognized center of excellence, and there was a difference in the level of care and knowledge. Can you speak to that a little bit about what the differences are?
Yeah. I mean, like you said, my Dr. Heller from Connecticut Children's Medical Center, like obviously helped save my life. I was in a situation where I was very critical, and her team stepped in and that like linking the chain of survival and did what they had to do to keep me alive and diagnose me and kind of get me going. But right away, I mean, the first thing is, you're going to a place that specializes in your disease. So from a patient and psychological perspective, immediately you just feel like this person spends, if any physician spending, 15 hours a day focusing on something, this person's focusing on exactly what you have. So it kind of is like, okay, well, from my perspective, I was like, wow, okay, I'm gonna be able to meet with somebody that is an expert. And my relationship with Dr. Marin, I mean, I don't think that if I had never met him, I don't think my life would be what it is right now. I think that his combination of brilliance in HCM, combined with his ability to relate, kind of like what we were talking about, is exactly what 17-year-old Mike needed at that time. And yeah, I mean, just to be able to go there and hear his perspective, and basically, and I think I said this in the book, but use the term like normal life with me. Like, you're gonna have a normal life, and we're gonna help you. And there's gonna be some limitations, there's gonna be some bumps, but you're gonna live for a long time, and you're gonna live like a lot of other people. And that was the first time I really was able to kind of put that in perspective, and even think that my life was going to be normal, right? I thought I was going to be just like, when I first met him, I wasn't exercising at all. I was still in a position where I was scared to do a lot of things, and he really helped me take that next step to being a normal high school senior, college student, and young adult. And like I said, I mean, I can say with confidence that if I had never met him, my life would not be the way it is right now at age 32.
Well, I'm sure he's going to love hearing this. I know you said this to him. I've heard you in conversations at the summit and things of that nature say the exact same things, but now you're telling the world. And I think it really speaks to, it sounds simple. Well, your mom called the HCMA. The HCMA said, hey, here are some experts. She chose an expert. She chose Marty Marin. It was the right match for you. And now here we are today. That sounds very simple.
Yeah.
But it's not very simple.
No.
It's a lot of things had to line up so that all of the resources were where 17-year-old Mike needed them to be to turn him into 32-year-old Mike today. And I think a lot of things have happened this week where the common theme of the week is what we've built here at HCMA is working to impact lives beyond my expectations. You're one of them. That because everything went the way it's supposed to go in healthcare, which is not common. I had a talk that's going to turn into a podcast of its own with a healthcare provider within our HCM system who has his own diagnosis now of something rare. And he called me this week and said, do you know how important this work you're doing is? I'm like, I kind of think so. And he's like, no, it doesn't exist for lots of other diseases, and they're not as organized. And because they're not as organized, patients are falling through cracks. And I just took a moment and went, okay, it worked. And then I was reading through your book. I'm like, okay, the system works. Now we just need to let everybody else know the system and grow the system. So it's awesome.
And I'm not to cut you off, but I mean, your work is like a huge link in patients like me. I felt that way since I've been diagnosed, and you started the organization 10 years before that, but there's a huge need for the work that you do. And again, it's going back to, it's even take it a step further. Like, if my mom didn't call you, again, I'm confident that I wouldn't have, like, I'm really happy with my life right now. And I'm very confident that if my mom never makes that phone call, I don't get connected to Dr. Marin, who's allowed me to get to this point. So it's crucial what you're doing.
It's awesome when things work. So you also have the advocacy bug, which I like. And you've taken to service in another aspect of the lives of those with heart disease. And that is because you almost didn't get to be here because a piece of equipment wasn't where you needed it at that time. And that's an AED. And you've started an organization. Why don't you tell us a little bit about the organization and what you guys do?
Yeah. So we started in a Heartbeat, which is a nonprofit organization in 2000 and end of 2015, early 2016 is when we really got it going. And our mission is, of course, to prevent death from sudden cardiac arrest and hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, which is what we're passionate about. And we've, early on, I'm similar to you. I'm sure when you started your organization, it's like very overwhelming and like, what do we do and what's going on here? And talk about like Google. I'm like Googling everything and just kind of like really figuring out, because ultimately, nonprofit world is interesting because you're running a business, and I think that sometimes that gets mistaken, but I had no background in doing that. But so when we first started, we knew that we wanted to help place AEDs to places that need them, and we wanted to help support research projects that focused on hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So right away, we started doing some work. We started donating AEDs. We would support actually the HCM Center at Tufts once a year with a check. And, we did that for a few years. We're still doing it, but we're kind of trying to grow where we connect with patients from time to time and kind of help them as kind of just almost like and it's me personally, just to be like a younger person that can kind of have an impact in their life. And of course, suggest them to call you at the HCMA whenever they reach out. But like, just helping patients like of those ICD feelings and things that I live through. And, I think that's a huge piece of it. And then the latest thing is we're working on, helping young people in Connecticut get electrocardiograms. And it's definitely that piece of it's a challenge, but I have a very abnormal ECG and, mine would have been detected if I had one and I might not have almost died that day. So we're working with some two sides, community to just kind of bring kids in if parents want to sign them up. And then we also partner with universities in Connecticut to include the ECG as part of the student athlete pre-participation physical to get them cleared to play sport at that school, which is the project we're working on with Dr. Lampert, which is awesome. So yeah, it's obviously a huge passion. And, a few of our AEDs have saved people and a few of our ECGs have detected we haven't gotten an HCM, but we've gotten WPW that's been ablated and a few other things. So we're seeing the impact, and we're excited to kind of watch it grow.
So we're looking forward to working with you on a slightly different angle on that project, and that's our Hcm Act, which does not stand for hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. It's the Healthy Cardiac Monitoring Act. The Healthy Cardiac Monitoring Act will ensure that physicians know what the diseases are that they're looking for all causes of cardiac disease in the young, and put that in the well-child examination so that every interaction a family has during the well-child exam, there's an opportunity to talk about cardiac health history in the family, in the child, and to assign the appropriate test to the appropriate family based on the family history. So anybody who wants to get involved with that, all you need to do is go over to the HCMA website and there's Ross or somebody, one of my staff just posted it in below. You can just go right on there and click to learn more about that or to get involved. So I'm glad to say that we're getting some comments here, and we're inspiring a lot of people to want to get out and get involved. So I'm going to tell you about a little program you're going to get noticed about this weekend a lot in your email basket if you're our emails. And that is February's Heart Month, and it's just a couple of days away. And the HCMA is going to be featuring a warrior of the day for unsung heroes of HCM. And we've just selected 28 stories that show the very wide diversity of HCM patient experiences, from teenagers to people in their 80s, everybody in between. Some of the stories of those who didn't get to treatment in time, and others are amazing survivors and thrivers. And we're going to feature one every day through the month of February. So we're asking y'all to share it through your social media. And we're going to get people sick of HCM by the end of the month, hopefully. But they'll be
I'm never sick of it. So
I'm kind of sick of it every day, but I got to deal with it. And on top of that, on February 23rd, we're going to be holding some very special events throughout the day. Stay tuned for the full lineup. And we're going to be live as much as we can through the day. I don't know that we're going to do 24 hours, but we're going to try to stay live as much as we can with new content and new stories and new perspectives on HCM and a big media push. So hopefully you too will see HCM showing up in your news channels and on your news feeds, because we need to talk about this. There are currently in the United States about 150,000 individuals with an active diagnosis of HCM, which means there are another 800,000 possible patients that could be diagnosed and get to treatment in time.
Mhm.
So little initiatives, big initiatives.
Mhm.
There are people at risk. We don't want more Mike's mom calling Lisa while the kid's unconscious in an emergency room. We got to get there in time. And with proper diagnosis, proper management, we know our survival rate is great. Without timely diagnosis, without the ability to get to care, our lives would not be so good.
Mhm.
So we all have to fight for that. So, Mike, we're getting lots of awesomes and yays, and we're inspiring people. That's what we're supposed to do, right? Get out there, get involved, click some buttons, send some messages. You can do this. Y'all got to pick up Mike's book. Okay, look, there it's on the back, looking all dapper in his suit. And, very, very rarely do you actually see written on the back cover, hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. So, you're in the right place. And I wanted to share a couple of other little things. So, when I talk to you, I take lots of notes. I actually found Mike's original file here, and the original pictures his mom sent. Got to embarrass him. There's that 17-year-old, and then we have the Christmas card with the dogs.
Yeah.
So, it's for me, like watching you go from the 17-year-old to the young man who's advocating for AED placement, working in the industry, doing all these great things. I'm really glad that everything worked.
Yeah.
For today.
Yeah. And thank you, Lisa, for the work you're doing. Because like I said, it really gives people like me the chance to do what I'm doing now. And again, live the life that I'm currently living. And, that's the goal, I think, right? For a patient when they get diagnosed is to be confident that they're going to live a long life and be confident that they're going to live a normal life. And the work that you're doing is allowing people like me to do that. So, I can't thank you enough.
It is partnership and it's a team. Okay. Yes, it was my idea, but ideas only go so far without everybody working with you to believe in the passion and the cause. The cause is Mike. Is that 17-year-old that I don't know yet, Mike doesn't know yet, who's going to need a safety net, and his family doesn't know they need a safety net yet. But when you need it, it's here. So it's a team. It's the Center of Excellence partners. So you can get competent care in your area. It's the volunteerism. It's the staff. It's the board. It's the whole thing that was built, and it's going to still grow. We got a lot of work to do. I mean, you're doing a great service to help people get AEDs when they can't afford them or they don't know that they need them. So that is a fantastic service. And I'm sure, I don't quite know where our futures are going, Mike, but we're doing some more other stuff together. I don't know what it is yet, but we're doing something together. We'll come up with some project, but Definitely. To save the world in some other way. So there's a lot of great stuff going on. And who knows what the future will be for Mike. So what is the future plan for Mike? Where are we going next?
Yeah, it's a good question. I'm so passionate about what I do, and I'm able to do some work now with an AED manufacturer. So I'm excited to kind of see like what that next generation of AED is and kind of have my footprint on that and what I believe it should be. So I get to do that, grow our organization and collaborate obviously with other organizations like the Hcm and there's so many out there doing great work. And ultimately I just love to see like, in terms of like from a cardiac arrest perspective, I'd love to see the numbers get better, right? The numbers kind of have been a plateau for a long time in terms of survival rate. And I'd love to see those numbers go up. And it's going to take a lot of work, a lot of awareness, a lot of AED placement, a lot of training to make that happen. But that's the goal is ultimately to save more people's lives.
Couldn't agree more. You think back, and I do sound old when I say some of this stuff, but it is what it is. I embrace my age. I don't feel bad about it, but it just feels like we were having these conversations in the 90s. Okay.
Yeah.
I remember going to my local school district, the K through 8, and encouraging them to put AEDs in. And at that time, it was only Medtronic really had the portable device. And I brought them the brochures and I brought them information. And I said, no, you really need to do this. There are children in our community at risk. And the grammar school took it up immediately in 1999. So Rockaway Township Public Schools, bravo, you got AEDs in 1999, and they were properly deployed and they were in the schools. And then I went to the high school and I gave them the same exact talk, the same exact slides, the same exact information. And at which point, one of the older members of the board, who kind of was the voice at the time, told me, the police will get here in plenty of time. That's their job. We're not spending money on it. And I was like devastated. I'm like, do you know how long it would take the police to find somebody on this campus? Like, and how long it would take? And I'm going through the numbers and I'm upsetting him because I said no to him and I pushed back. So I was shocked and they wouldn't do it. And I went back the next year They finally did it, but they wouldn't listen to me about the emergency action plan. And they didn't put one in place to the way that I would have preferred it. I'll be honest, I was a little picky about it. And the locations of the devices, they were in the nurse's office and that was it, on large campuses and in a multi-high school system. Well, a couple of years later, they needed it on the track. And it didn't get there in time. And a young lady was lost. Would she have been saved by the device being on the field? It's not 100% sure, right? Because cardiac arrest is unpredictable. But it took too long. They've changed their practices. They've changed the policies. And we've learned. But we only, unfortunately, learn from failures.
Exactly. And that's the biggest frustration for me is someone shouldn't have to die for someone to try to make that change. And that we see it all the time too. It's like pushback and on different things. And the second something, right? I mean, even in my situation, right? There's no AED there. The second a 17-year-old almost dies, it's like, oh, we should have one of those. I just heard a case out of a fitness center where the device was there, but not used. So it's not a box on the wall. You actually have to take it down and use it and know how to use it and not be afraid to use it and not fear liability if you do it wrong. Because if you do nothing, the person will die. If you do something, they might live. And we need people to take action. And there are so many amazing people that I know that are doing fantastic work in this area. And we all just need to keep doing it. And then also, so there's the two sides. When somebody goes down, being able to respond, but getting them before they go down and being able to get into healthcare systems that understand you. If you have an innocent heart murmur and have never had it worked up, how do you know it's innocent? It might be hypertrophic cardiomyopathy. If you have athletically induced asthma and you get short of breath walking upstairs, did you have a pulmonary function test to prove that? Or have you seen a cardiologist? There are low-lying fruit. Athletically induced asthma and innocent murmur are the number 1 and 2 misdiagnoses associated with HCM. And if you have both athletically induced asthma and a murmur, please see a cardiologist and rule out what's going on there. These are the messages we need to get out to the public. That's good. Definitely. Education and awareness is a huge step. And like I said, I mean, my family had none and didn't even think it could affect a young person. Obviously now we lived it and we know it, but still I talk to people and I'm 30. I mean, this has been 15 years. And when I tell someone I have heart disease, the first thing a lot of people say is, wow, you're so young. I'm like, well, I was a lot younger when it happened, and, but still it's just, there's a lack of awareness out there, about it. And that's what we're trying to do is to just educate people and listen to your body, right? Listen to the symptoms. And, I could tell about a million things, but that's another young athlete thing is right. The heart disease symptoms, shortness of breath, dizziness often are signs that when you're training at a high level, oh, I'm pushing myself. I'm supposed to feel this way, right? I'm supposed to be out of breath. I'm supposed to be dizzy because I'm trying to beat out the competition. I was there, but you need to listen to those symptoms and if those
that goes to the definition of normal. When you're born with an abnormal heart or your HCM develops slowly over time. Mine was present at 12. My daughter was present at 10. My niece was present at 8. So you can see it younger. But typically, you just acclimate to the heart you have.
You're normal. Yep.
You don't know what a symptom is because Is it a
normal,
symptom to, breathe? That's just normal.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're short of breath or you're dizzy, okay, that just happens.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not necessarily so.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe that was the only slight warning sign that you had in advance, that I get a little dizzy sometimes. But how do you know the difference? And it's complicated.
Yeah.
So we want everybody to get screened there. Okay. So Mike, I'm going to take a minute here that's not about Mike and Lisa.
That's fine. Yeah.
And I want to talk about something else for just a moment today.
Yeah.
It's a personal thing. We lost a member of my community. Her name was Evelyn Karpak. And Evelyn was about 91 years old. She died a week or so before her 91st birthday. And the reason I want to talk about Evelyn, she was known as Tante Evie to some, Mrs. Karpak, Mrs. K, but she was the librarian in my local school. She was one of my mother's best friends. Her former husband, who passed away a long time ago, was my father's best friend growing up. So Mrs. Karpak has always been in my stratosphere and in my life in some way. But this is a woman who bowled every week, not necessarily well, but she bowled every week up until the Thursday before she died. She was active. She did so many community events. She was involved with the Sons of Norway. She ran the children's camp. She was involved with the church. She ran the bazaar. She was involved with the firehouse and the ladies auxiliary. And she was always someplace doing something for somebody else. She also lost her husband very young with 4 young sons at home. She raised 4 boys by herself, lost 2 of those boys later in life, and went through a lot of hardship. If you really knew her and you saw her out in the community, you would never think she'd been through so many trials and so much. And she was involved every day of her life, caring, giving back to people. She even volunteered for the HCMA on many occasions in our early days with my mom, stuffing envelopes in her little office in Hibernia. So when somebody dies, it's sad. But when somebody lives a life as good as Evelyn Karpak, I need to tell you all, be an Evelyn. She was an amazing person. And I have a small platform to tell her story. She was an awesome human being, and I'm very honored to have had her in my life. So, Evie, that's for you. So I've announced the birth of my great nephew and the death of Evelyn on the podcast now. So you're all getting to know my inner circle. Sorry about that, Mike. I just had to do that.
Sorry.
So other things I want to tell everybody before we leave today. Pick up Mike's book. It's a great read. And they've already placed it in the chat there below. So you can pick up the book. Please visit our advocacy efforts and learn how to help us change law. We need to change the law to change the world. And that's just the way it's going to be. So we're just going to do it, people. We're all going to work together, and we're going to make the world a little bit better tomorrow than it was yesterday. Big Hearted Warrior Tour coming up in February. Stay tuned for that. All of the events coming up for February. It's going to be an amazing month. There's going to be a lot of content. Please share it. And stay tuned for an amazing podcast with Dr. Aslan Turer from UT Southwestern with some unique perspectives on managing chronic disease. His insights this week to me were just absolutely, I think I told my staff it was one of the most important and impactful conversations I've had in my life. And I'm like, dude, this is a podcast. You got to come on with me. We got to talk about this. So we will be talking to him soon about that. So I do hope that you all tune in for that. Mike, any parting words, any last thoughts that you want to share with the community? They're also inspired by you.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, thank you. That's the first thing I like to say again for everything that you've done to have a positive impact on my life. And I guess if I had, one piece of advice for everybody, all the other HCM warriors, that'd be just, stay patient, and it's not going to happen overnight. But listen to your doctors, listen to other people living through what you're living through, and just kind of trust the process and know that you can get, your normal life back. And it might be different, a little slightly different than someone else's normal, but you can live a long and normal life with the disease. And it's just going to take some time to get there. So be patient with it.
I think that's very good advice. And, We all have our own paths with HCM. Some of you, your device is your destination and that's where you live. Others develop obstruction later in life and have to go for a myectomy. Mike, we didn't even get a chance to talk about parts of the book, and I kind of left it as a teaser. But Mike had to experience open heart surgery for a completely different reason. So, it's not all sunshine, butterflies, and roses. It's things that test you. And I have a little hanger around here. It's like, if you want to see how tough, a woman is, treat her like a tea bag, put her in hot water, and see what you get. I think that's kind of an HCM thing. Like, just throw us in hot water, see how strong we can be. Yeah. We all have our balance to strike with normal life and achieving our goals and living with HCM and not in fear of it. My heart's in a box back there because I don't have her anymore. We had an amicable divorce. It's okay. Yeah. I got custody.
Yeah. I think you showed it to me.
I did show you my heart.
Yeah. I think I've seen it. I think I might have touched it.
You might have. Yeah. I've had her around. She's well traveled, that girl. Yeah. But she's got to work. She's got a job to do. When you think about HCM and you look at Mike, he looks completely healthy. He is a young, attractive man who looks like the picture of health, but that heart is wonky. It's wonky and it lasts. The very first patient ever diagnosed with HCM, Mr. Claude Brady, diagnosed in 1959 in his late 20s. He transplanted later in life and he's still alive today. The very first patient is still alive. Yeah. Like, we have a lot to be hopeful for. And we have great physicians like Marty and team and lots of other great physicians. The next week, we're going to be hearing from Dr. Harry Lever again. And then next month, I'm going to have Dr. Stephen Amman join us for podcasting. And he'll be joining me every other month. And I have so many great people to introduce you all to this year. So this is season 2 of Tales from the Heart. We've got our new cool backdrop, which we've talked about before. But we're excited to share these stories. Mike, I think we should make this like an annual chat and see what's going on. See how we've conquered the world. And we look forward to including you in all of our HCMA activities. And we look forward to supporting your initiatives in terms of getting AEDs out into the public. So thank you for the work that you're doing. Thank you for writing the memoir. Now we're going to get it out there. Look, everybody, get your mine's not signed. How could that be? I don't have a signed copy.
I'll get you a signed copy. Maybe, I need an excuse to come. I've never been to the actual HCMA headquarters, so maybe that's an excuse to come.
So you need to come down and deliver a book. You're not that far away. It's a drive.
It's a quick drive.
Oh, I have to tell you the one last little Mike Papale story that I don't even know if you know or not. So my daughter is now 26 years old. 26. Yeah, my daughter's 26. How do I have a 26-year-old daughter? Anyway, when her first college, she went to Sacred Heart up in Connecticut. Yeah. And we're there for the enrollment, kind of walking through everything. And Becca has hypertrophic cardiomyopathy too. And we just wanted to make sure that it was a safe environment for her. So I said, I don't know if you've ever heard of this disease. And the young lady, I do not remember her name, sitting across from me, she's like, my friend Mike has that. And I went, okay. She goes, he almost died on a basketball court. I said, Mike Papale? She's like, I did not yes. Know that. And funny. I said, I know Mike. She's like, how do you know Mike? I'm like, I know his mom. So this is now
that's funny.
Like 10 years, like 9-10 years ago. So she had just gotten her job there. And I guess she went to high school with you.
Wow.
So she remembered.
Yeah. I know exactly who you're talking about, actually. I know exactly who she is. Because I know she was working at Sacred Heart after college. And she was a manager with me for the basketball team at Quinnipiac.
There you go.
Fun fact about her. I'll tell you a fun fact. She's married to Kevin from Pentatonics. I don't know if you're familiar with Pentatonics.
I am.
A cappella group, and he's the beatboxer. And they're married, and they live in outside LA, and they just had their first baby. So that is, I know for a fact that was her. So
okay, well, you got to tag them into this post.
Yeah, definitely, social. Definitely.
And Pentatonics, we need an HCMA theme song. We have
right.
Let's get some lyrics there for Pentatonics to do.
Right.
That'd be awesome. So she was awesome, and my daughter did not end up graduating from there, but she now has her master's, and Becca will be therapist Becca as soon as all the paperwork gets processed. So I built my own therapist.
Yeah.
From scratch. Mike, thanks so much for being here today. I really look forward to having other conversations in the future. And for everybody joining us on Facebook, thank you for all the positive messages. This is a kind of fun podcast. We're not talking about nitty gritties of HCM. We're talking about beating it and living with it and getting in there. And we're going to do a lot more of this year. So thank you all for joining us. And we're going to say goodbye. Have you enjoyed this episode of Tales from the Heart? We hope so. Please visit us at 4hcm.org, become a member, become a donor, become a volunteer. Great news, everybody. HCM Academy is now available online. What is it? It includes online sessions, learning about hypertrophic cardiomyopathy, patient stories about HCM and their management, and an opportunity to join online live with an HCM specialist to go over the slides, ask questions, and dig deeper into your understanding and knowledge of HCM. All CME courses are free, and you can find them at 4hcm.org or at thehcmacademy.com. The Big Hearted Warrior Tour continues. For the latest dates, please check 4hcm.org, and thanks to our sponsors, Bristol Myers Squibb, Cytokinetics, Invitae, and Boston Scientific. Did you know discussion groups are available at 4hcm.org? Monday through Friday, almost every day you can find a discussion group. Whether you're interested in learning more about ICDs, pre-myectomy, screening your family, there's a discussion group for you. Even if you just want to learn how to balance your mental health, we have that too. So please join us for one of our live discussion groups, moderated by a peer volunteer, and you can sign up in advance at 4hcm.org. Just check the calendar for events. Please contact the Hypertrophic Cardiomyopathy Association at 4hcm.org or by calling our office at 973-983-7429. You can contact the HCMA by email at support@4hcm.org. Tales from the Heart, a podcast from the HCMA, is made possible through sponsorship from Boston Scientific, Cytokinetics, Tenaya, Invitae, and Boston Scientific.